Hi guys, so today's video is going to be my February TBR. Since February has Valentine's Day in it, a few of these books are going to be kind of fluffier just to fit the holiday, but not all of them. I'm going to start with the non-fluffy books. The first one would be The Traitor's Blade by Sebastian de Castell. I've had my eye on this author for a while, but I never really hear too many people talk about them, and then my friend Joshana ended up reading this book and she had a really good time with it, and she said that it was a lot of fun, that it was really good adult fantasy, and I just would like to give it a shot. It's from my library. I've been trying to go to the library more this year because we have the loveliest library near us, so I don't know too much else about it, but I'm really excited about it. A few of you have mentioned that he has a young adult series as well that's really good, and I don't think I've seen it very often either. I just don't see him talked about very much. So if you guys have read his works, let me know. The other non-fluffy book I'm planning to get to is definitely very much not fluffy at all, and that would be Dead House Gates. This is the second book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series. There's a Facebook group set up for this. I set it up back when I read the first one, and a lot of you wanted to just keep on going, which is awesome. The group is really nice, so for those of you that even if you've read the entire series or you're brand new to this series, you can join that Facebook group. This is known for being a very dense, kind of difficult fantasy series, and I know it's very helpful when you can kind of ask other people, hey, what the heck was this? What was going on? So if you are interested in that, I'll have it linked down below, but this is the second book. I know, I've taken so long to get to this, but February. It is my biggest non-fluffy read. Everything else is pretty small, very manageable, so this is happening. There's actually another book on here that's not fluffy, but it is a buddy read book, and that would be Vengeful. This is the sequel to Vicious by V.E. Schwab. My husband and I are doing this thing this year where every month we pick one or two books that we are going to both read, but throughout the month we don't talk about the book to each other, but we will talk about it in our vlog so that you guys can see our individual thoughts, but we have no idea what the other person thinks, and at the end of the month we'll finally sit and talk to each other about it and find out what the other thought, and you guys can kind of be in on like a little inside joke the whole time. So this is one of the books for the buddy read. We actually have two this month. This is the only month in the year that one of the books is a sequel, but we both read the first one and enjoyed it. It's a split timeline story where the characters' near-death experiences give them powers. The powers are very interesting and different from one person to the next, and our two main characters used to be best friends, and then something happened and now they hate each other, and you have the split timeline where you see them in the past when they used to be friends, and then you see them in the present where they hate each other and want to kill each other, and then you kind of get the pieces as you go along. It was very interesting. It was different. We both liked it, and we both really want to get to the sequel. The other buddy read book for this month with my husband and I is going to be Geekerella. This is just kind of a contemporary fluffy romance with the little nerdy girl, and it sounds very cutesy and very sweet. And we just figured he's been reading a lot of literary fiction recently and a lot of downers. He's been reading a lot of depressing books. I read primarily fantasy. I also like the sad stuff. And we just thought for Valentine's Day, this would be a really good, fun, just fluff, just cotton candy kind of a read. I have partnered with the app Bisons for all of the buddy reading. It's actually going to be set up for all of you with every single one of the books I'm going to mention on my TBR, but like I said, the ones that my husband and I are specifically buddy reading will be this one and Vengeful, but I just figured if you want to read any of the books I'm going to be reading and you want to see if anybody else is reading them, I'll have a breakdown for every single one of these in the app. Right now, Bisons is primarily focused on just being a buddy reading app, and you can have books that you want to read, books that you are currently reading, and then books that you've read. And then there's different sections and chats for each of those. So it's really nice because you can chat with other people who haven't read it yet but want to. And then you can talk about what you're excited about, what you're expecting. And then once you switch to the currently reading, you can start talking spoilers. You can have separate breakdowns so that you can have it split apart by section. It's really cool. It's a great way, I think, to approach buddy reading so that people don't get spoiled. Jumping back to the TBR, the next fluffy book would be Ever the Brave. This is a fantasy story, but I would say it's kind of a fantasy romance. I read the first one last year when I was in Ireland because the main character, she's kind of like this tracker and she's very good at navigating the environment, and it's kind of a foresty feeling, and it just felt so fitting for Ireland. And so I read it then, and I'm not usually one to love when the romance is a huge part of the book, but with that one, I didn't mind. There was a cliffhanger at the end of the book, and I want to see what happens next. It seemed like a good one to pick up too, because, you know, Valentine's Day, lovey-dovey stuff, and this is red. It just looks like it's meant for Valentine's Day. The setup for the first one is that our main character's father dies, and she doesn't have a mother, so now she's an orphan, and she has been sent to try and track down his killer, and they think right now that his killer was her childhood best friend. That's the premise. So she's not only trying to find her father's killer, but also everything, all the evidence is pointing to her childhood friend, and she wants to figure out what the heck happened, how could this be, did he really kill her father? So there's a little bit of like a murder mystery element to it, as well as a love story and some interesting fantasy elements. We didn't dive that deep into them in the first one, but maybe in the second one. I'm hoping. We'll see. Next up, we have the next book in the Grisha Trilogy. This is one of the big buddy reads I'm doing this year because the Netflix adaptation has been announced. They've been talking about casting, and so I wanted to go back and reread this series. I finished the first one in this last month, and I actually still had a really good time with it. I know a lot of people love to hate on it, but I think part of it is that it's just so youthful, the dialogue, the tone of the book. It just feels very much like the young end of young adult, but I still had a good time with it. I remember this one annoying me, or I should say the characters annoying me, and a lot of times it seemed like there was some miscommunication or characters would get frustrated and they'd just not talk to each other and things like that. I remember there being some things that frustrated me about the second one, but we'll find out if that's the case on the reread. The last two books on this list are sequels. One is the second book in a trilogy, and one is the last book in a trilogy. I'll start with that one. It would be Ember Queen. This is the last book in the, oh my gosh, it's Ash Princess, but my husband always says Trash Princess, and I almost just said that as if that was the title. This is a story with a very morbid setup. The idea is that the main character's land was conquered, and the conquerors kept her alive to use her against her own people. If they try to rebel, then she'll be publicly beaten. So her life kind of sucks. And she finally gets a spark of hope and decides that she's going to try and stop being used against her kingdom, and she's going to try to do some stuff from the inside to try and help them out. So the premise is very inspiring, and it seems like it's kind of dark and grim. It's not really, I mean, there's some grim elements to it, and there's some violence, but I would say it's a very tropey read, and I enjoyed it. I read the first one very quickly. I read the sequel very quickly, so I'm definitely excited to see how things wrap up, especially because we kind of had a cliffhanger. The other sequel would be Heart of Flames by Nikki Pau-Preto. It's a sequel to Crown of Feathers, and this one follows a girl who ends up disguising herself as a boy to join this rebellious group of Phoenix Riders. And there's a couple of other main characters as well. One who is kind of on the opposite side, the enemy side, but doesn't want to be. And then there is a guy who is part of the rebellion's Phoenix Riders. He's the son of kind of the leader of that group. And so the way they all intertwine is super interesting to see. There's a lot of lore in the story. There's a lot of history. And the first book was really good. The second one is supposed to be really chunky. And I'm excited because I feel like I actually, right now, I find so many adult fantasy books to be super chunky. And I'm like, oh, I kind of want like some shorter ones. But with a young adult, most of them are smaller. And I'm kind of looking forward to chunkier ones. So the opposite. I do have a really quick question for all of you. So there was an Owlcrate special edition for the first one, Crown of Feathers. Do any of you have it and don't want it and would want to do a trade? Because I have the Owlcrate of Heartless, and I'm willing to trade. If anybody has the other one and wants to do that, let me know. If you do, that would be great. Anyway, that is it for my February TBR. I will have Bisons, the buddy reading app, linked down below, and like I said, I'll have breakdowns of all of these for if you want to do it that way, and then I also will have the Malazan Facebook buddy reading group linked too. As always, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later.